What does the $50 billion budget deficit mean to poor and unemployed South Africans? To what extent does policy uncertainty impact the economy? Is the poor revenue collection not indicative of a looming tax revolt in the country? Is the National Treasury consistent in how it bails out state-owned entities? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Bonge Kwala, standing in from Port Said today. Yesterday's medium-term budget policy statement by Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba continues to dominate headlines. By lunchtime today, the currency was trading at around 14 Rand 24 to the US dollar. This was almost 50 cents weaker than yesterday's morning trade ahead of a finance minister's speech. The speech has revealed a number of things which economists regard as issues of concern. Top on the list is that the budget deficit has increased by over 50 billion rand. The deficit is likely to have a negative impact on service delivery, social responsibilities and infrastructure development, amongst other things. This coupled with the apparent lack of tax compliance, of course. Economists say policy and political uncertainty are likely to continue impacting the economy negatively. This including the controversial bailout of state-owned companies, the nuclear program, as well as allegations of state capture and corruption. We are live, therefore you can call us and air your views. We are available on these numbers: 0891 104210. That's the number to call, 0891 104210. If you're calling from abroad, you can start with a +27 89 110 4210, or you can tweet us. Your comments are welcome at QuestionTime24. My guests today are Owen Nkomo, Chief Executive Officer of Nkunzi Wealth Group, and Professor Susan Poison from the Wits School of Governance. But before we talk to the two guests today, let's take a look at what Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba had to say yesterday when he was presenting his budget speech.
As the shareholder, we are tired of being dragged into crisis by those we employ to govern and manage state-owned companies. This must end. The trend of state-owned companies seeking bailouts to finance operational expenditure, inefficiency and waste must also be brought to an end.
There you have it. So, Owen Nkomo, good to have you with us. Hello.
Thank you, Mpebet.
Susan Poison, good to chat to you.
Thank you, Bongi.
Let me start with you, Owen. Right. So economists have spoken. They've said this is a negative medium-term budget. But what is it that Malusi Gigaba could have done differently? Because he walked into a situation where these things were there already. So perhaps let's look ahead and not look at what has happened.
Yeah, look, Bongi, one almost recalls every time that they ask that question about ministers and what they have been up to.
Yeah.
Where, they almost have an excuse that says they are just carrying on the status quo of things, so we must forgive them because, there was nothing that they could do differently. But I think in my view, my biggest concern is the consistency in the messages from government and the consistency in terms of a collaborated approach towards dealing with things from both the government and the corporate side of things, where I've consistently said that we're not working together. There's a big divide between corporate South Africa and the government, and I think that in my view the minister could have done a few more things differently. There's a few things that have been done already. We talked that the nuclear conversation, the government should definitely outrightly say we cannot do nuclear at this stage because the economy is very bad. We have to wait for the economy to turn around. But
the problem is that there are mixed messages coming out already, because
Absolutely.
we hear about the Russians. We're here to say, hey, move it on. We want this nuclear.
So there's that allegation. Then there's someone who says, Mashlobo say the nuclear energy project is going to continue. And then the minister himself said, you know what, it's a measured pace. But I really think that doesn't give us comfort, because at this stage, the measured pace we can afford is zero movement on nuclear energy because our finances are so bad. I really think we need to focus on managing the finances better. I think that also on the state-owned enterprises, we should have been more bolder and said we are not going to continue to finance SAA. He did come out and say he's tired of government as a shareholder being consistently the lender of last resort to these guys. But I think we need to say we've been doing this for over 5-10 years now. Can we privatize these things? Because I don't know if you guys...
But is going to say that's not the way to go.
No, but I mean, I think if you look at telecom and the partial privatization, it worked. Now, they're actually ironically making money out of telecom to plug a dark hole in SAA, which we don't know when it's going to stop.
Susan, let me bring you in here. I mean, Owen is talking about ministers saying, but I'm just carrying on with what has been said by my predecessors. But at this pace, when we change ministers like this, so ministers will be justified in saying, hey, look, I inherited this. I don't know what's going on. I'm new in this department.
Yes, it's a forever new excuse that we see in public policy making and determination of policy certainty in South Africa. Ministers are rotated so frequently, sometimes like we saw in the last case, in crucial ministries, 6, 7, 8 months apart. And in ministries where there should have been rotation, there was no rotation, like in public enterprises, like in minerals and minerals. Minister Zwane, for example, adding to that policy uncertainty. And these ministers then get the opportunity to say, oh, I've only been in a job for a few months. Give me time to become accountable, to get on top of this job. And that is one of the big reasons for policy uncertainty that we see here.
Before I go to Andrew in Johannesburg, we're talking about policy uncertainty. Any specific policy, or we're talking about a plethora of policies that government is not giving direction on?
It's a plethora of especially economic and socio-economic policies that there needs to be much more certainty on. We can look at the mining charter and the huge uncertainty and now litigation that has followed from that. And exactly the one Owen has been mentioning, the big nuclear one and the mixed signals there. And South Africa cooperating by all indications with the Russians and Rosatom, and the presidency being deadly silent on the issue of big Russians visiting and trying to enforce a nuclear policy implementation in a world where nuclear technology is dying. South Africa, with a non-existing resources that we have, seem to be willing to move in and rescue a failing nuclear industry. And South Africa cannot afford this uncertainty. So these are examples of the uncertainties we have. But so many of the state-owned enterprises, big contractors, big procurement agencies, they are wasting public resources.
All right, Andrew, you are in Orlando. Hello.
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Andrew?
And the guys there on the street.
Go ahead, yeah.
It is very clear that we're dealing with a clueless state. The government of the ANC, they are clueless people, they don't know what they are doing. It's time we remove them because they are costing us this country big time. By the end of the year 2019, people have to vote wisely and remove them. These people are arrogant. They keep on saying the nuclear. We cannot afford the nuclear at this stage. But they want to bring it back. Masova have just made it very clear, and Malusi Gigaba. These people, they are arrogant. We need to remove them. We need to bring people on board who knows how to run the country. They will always tell you, we have liberated you. After liberation, they are clueless. They don't know how to take the country forward. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew in Orlando. Let me come back to you, Owen. The issue of revenue collection, it's a thorny issue as well. I mean, those two instruments, we're talking about the budget deficit, we're talking about the revenue collection that is shrinking. Now we know that it's about 3.4% will be under. What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, it means that the government actually now has to rely more on borrowed money for it to meet its financial requirements. And I'll say to you that I agree with Andrew. I mean, you know that we're not collecting enough tax, but you're not doing the right things when you have an opportunity to reduce government costs, which is what I think the minister should have gone out and done. We should have seen more cuts in government expenditure. Some economists may argue that no, if the economy is not doing well, you need to be spending more. But unfortunately, we're pushing our debt to GDP numbers too aggressively.
Because we were talking about over R1 trillion collected, and everyone was happy. Tom Moyana was saying, I've done it, it's the first time it's done. Where does this 50 billion rand then come from?
The economy obviously is not doing so well. Companies are not making as much money as they used to make. So therefore, the amount of money the government collects as tax is always a function of what corporates make. We just need to create an environment that allows corporates to flourish.
But then Malusi Gigaba could then be justified in saying, it's the state of where things are. Emerging markets are all suffering. South Africa is no isolation, is no exclusion from the rest of the world.
So if that is the case, then why are you spending money financing companies that are not making money, and that have got a big trail of losses when we're not making enough cash at the moment? Why are you not being brave enough to introduce what we call austerity measures? We need to start tightening our belts so that the difference between the tax that we're bringing in as a country and the expenditure that government is currently spending to run the country, at least there's a smaller difference. We can't keep our expenditure exploding at the same time we're losing the ability to borrow money at cheap rates. We're spending right now about 165 odd billion rands in interest annually of the money that we collect. That's money that could go to pay for students out there. That's money that could cover a few other things out there.
I wonder what is that doing on the balance of payment. But Victor, you are on the line. Good evening to you, Victor. Oh, Victor has dropped. All right, so we'll continue with this discussion, of course, in conversation with Owen Goma and Susan Boysen. We're talking about, we're digesting the policy, medium-term policy statement that was presented by Minister Malusi Gigaba, Minister of Finance. Don't go away, we're coming back.
This distinguished CEO would say the best way to enjoy a brandy is whilst wearing diamond-encrusted lamb's wool socks, accompanied by
the smell of fresh money.
Woo! Really? Sock diamonds? Well, we'd say a brandy enjoyed with last night's pizza works just as well. Tops at Spa. Good brandy, good advice, no blingy socks.
Welcome back. You are still watching Question Time. My guest today, Owen Nkomo, Chief Executive Officer at Inkunzi Wealth Group, and Professor Susan Boysen from the Wits School of Governance. Professor Boysen, let me come to you now. You know, the issue of downgrading is the issue that we just averted as the country this past year, a couple of months. So are we inviting it? Are we saying, hey, come, downgrade us? And if that happens, what then happens to the poor in South Africa?
Exactly. Yes, we had downgrades. And the point is, we are on that precipice of downgrade into junk status. And then, as Owen can explain much better than me, then capital and borrowing gets so much more expensive, and less money become available in the economy, and jobs cannot be created. We needed to grow at around 5% in order to address unemployment in South Africa. Now we're at 0.7% forecast, and that's possibly even going lower. That means the government is not bringing in jobs and poverty, and there's not enough money going around to address poverty, to increase the safety net in South Africa. In other words, government is really building on a time bomb, and there is more that they can do. There are certain constraints given we have narrowly been, or it's been quite close, we've been in a recession again, but there is more that can be done. Giving that security, addressing the problem of corrupt, captured, mismanaged state institutions, that is a massive problem in South Africa.
All right, Jabulani, you're on the line. Good evening to you.
I'm fine, and you?
I'm good, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, man. You know, I've been following this lady, Susan Boysen, all the time. Every time she speaks, she's always complaining about the same ministers all the time. We support the mining charter because we believe it's going to create jobs for South Africans. But now you see, every time she speaks, she's got a problem. She's got a very serious problem with Minister Zwane. She must stop doing that.
Listen, Jabulani, are you satisfied with the mining charter the way it is right now? Do you think it will address the issues that exist in this sector?
Yes, I am 100% satisfied. And she must also stick to the topic of the day, because it was not necessarily talking about the mining charter, but every time she speaks, she will mention Minister Zwane this, Minister Zwane that.
Okay.
And
let me assist you here, Jabulani. Let me assist you. The issue of policy cuts across all the sectors. Mining is one of the sectors that need policy, and she was referring to policy uncertainty in mining. So at least that's how it came in. So let me just clarify that part. But thank you very much for your call. Highly appreciated. I want us to come back to this particular issue before I come to you, Owen, and talk figures. And politically, we're going to the ANC elective conference right now, and we see all these movements. And some are saying President Jacob Zuma is playing his chess the best way he knows how. So what should we then read into the mood going into the elective conference, but also at the back of what is happening right now, the medium-term policy statement that is not satisfactory across. And also the changes that we are seeing right now. Yes. Some are even referring, I mean, if you read today, you'll find some economists and analysts are saying Malusi Gigaba is one of the champions of the state capture.
Yes, we know that there has been so much evidence coming in here and there over a number of years. And we know that cabinet members, senior members of the ANC, they are trying to read the tide. What direction are things shifting in the ANC in relation to the succession struggle and December policy elective conference of the ANC, assuming that will be happening. Indications are that it will. But the outcome of that could have a huge impact on policy and governance in South Africa. And that is what the world is looking at, and investors are looking at in South Africa. They want that certainty that their investments will not go down the drain, will not be captured in the way that we've seen many institutions now nosedive in South Africa. So they're looking for that, and the outcome, we have seen several big institutions, and that is the international world in which we live, where we need that international investments, foreign direct investment also. And they want to have certainty. They look at the outcome and they think ANC, Zuma, associated with capture, corruption, there is that inconvertible connection, and so there is a much better, more positive outlook that is associated with the side of the ANC contest that is challenging that, and that then hangs together with the expectation that would have to be proven whether a candidate like Cyril Ramaphosa could bring better policy security, better policy investment conditions,
sure,
wiser expenditure in South Africa.
All right. Let me take Lester. Lester, you're in Cape Town. Hello.
Hello, hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure,
actually, the chair of the Forum of Cape Flat Civics here. Yeah. And, I was listening attentively to the budget yesterday. One of the things was, of course, that there's been talk about a nuclear power station. We are, of course, completely against that. And we are sort of happy with what the minister is saying. Effectively, he's saying that nuclear is not going to be possible, if you read between the lines. But however, we have got some concerns, which perhaps your panel can also just address. We are concerned about the fact that the budget deficit has not been, was not specifically addressed. For example, explanation how they're going to cut that. But this is not something that is new. This has been going on for a number of years. We've made proposals to Pravin Gordhan, Msebeni Jonas, Nongqala Nene, but there seems to be a lack of political will. For example, with clear wastages taking place. And we're looking particularly at measures at how can we reduce those wastages, not only at national government level, but also at the coalface of service delivery, which is at municipal level. For example, you've got the perpetuation of apartheid spatial planning and the protection of the liquor industry. The liquor industry costs us 41 billion rand a year. It's come straight from the fiscus. Right, that we only receive 28 billion rand in terms of taxes. If this was anywhere else in the world and another industry, they'd be having to foot their whole bill, and it comes to about 69 billion rand. And then, of course, when you look in apartheid spatial planning as well, urban researchers will tell you that if we were to reverse urban sprawl, we could say between 35% to 45% of operational budget. In Cape Town alone, that would be 7 billion rand. So, we're talking about this, and we've been talking about it for years, but government doesn't seem to have the political will to deal with it.
All right, Lester, we got you. Thank you very much for your call, Lester in Cape Town. Owen, so Lester is asking a particular question, very, very pertinent question, so to speak. So how do you balance the scales right now? Now that you have this budget deficit of about 3.1%, you've got you'll collect less in your taxes by 50%. I don't know if it's a tax fatigue, people are just fatigued, or because genuinely there's no work, and genuinely people are saying, but we pay tax and our tax is abused the way that everyone has been saying. So how do you balance it as finance minister, as a cabinet minister, and as municipalities? How do you balance it to make sure that the little that you have can stretch just a little longer?
You have to make every cent count. You have to behave like it costs you a hell lot of money and time and effort to collect every single cent. So therefore, once you get it, you must manage it properly. I really think there's a lot of leakages in the system that should be avoided. And I think there's mismanagement of funds, of government funds, that in my view we could improve the management of those monies, which means that by the time we're collecting tax, we know that we are going to recoup XYZ money from managing efficiently our systems. I don't believe that we've got to a position where all the government departments are operating efficiently. I don't believe that we're in a position where we can account for every single cent that is budgeted for the departments to spend. So I really think that we're sitting in a position where we've got this very big failed fire out there, Bongi, but we've got people carrying spoons and coffee mugs to go and put this fire off. But it's not going to work. But
Owen, when the Auditor General year in and year out is pointing to those leakages and saying that we are leaking money, we are burning money, and nothing is being done, no one has been charged for that.
Bongi, I can't answer that. We've nominated people who are in politics and the judiciary to deal with those things for us, but I don't believe that that's happening, honestly. The growth of the national debt from about 38% a few years back to close to 60% forecasted. That's ridiculous. You cannot have a developing country that depends solely on exporting quite a lot of the stuff that we export. We are virtually price takers, and we depend on the world growing aggressively so that we can sell our raw materials. We cannot afford to have these luxuries, boy, where we're increasing debt this much, because we're increasing the amount of money we're paying in interest.
How do you bring back confidence then to an investor who's out there, who's still hopeful that South Africa might just turn the corner?
Consistency in the policies, consistency in our messaging, making sure that everyone who's important in making sure that all policies government implements is working together. The government needs the private sector. We need the government and the unions to work together. And importantly, we need the South African citizen to understand where we are, such that when the government comes out and says, you know what, I am increasing taxes, and we're going to try and do 1, 2, 3 to make sure these taxes are used to the benefit of the country. But at this stage, right now, everyone is driving in their own direction, and that's not what the country needs.
And Sen, as we are closing now, do you think Malusi Gigaba will come back next year in February to deliver the budget speech?
Well,
given what is happening right now and going to the elective conference?
It is a possibility. He is a pragmatist. He is clearly playing his cards in all safe directions, and it is possible he will be there again early next year, irrespective possibly of who wins, because even if it's not Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma who wins, who is aligned to that side where he had been or still is, we do not know, closely aligned with, will be important to show that there is some form of stability, unless people clearly things really fall apart further now, and there is a crisis more severe than what we have already, crisis of confidence. So it is possible that you will not, but it is such a tight rope that the ANC and government are walking here to show that they are sincere, that they are consistent. And even in this time where the rhetoric of radical economic transformation is sort of budding under the surface, Malusi Gigaba himself has seriously scaled down on his use of that rhetoric. That is a political dividing line. So he is playing it safe.
Okay.
He might be there.
Susan Boyson, thank you very much. Owen Koma, thanks to you as well.
Thank you.
And that was question time for today. A big thank you to my guest and for you at home for watching. And of course, my name is Bongikwala. Been in from Port Said today. It's been great. Good night.